I was married to a narcissist, so why did it take me years after my divorce to figure this out? I know that narcissism has gained a lot of attention and airtime over the years, but I do feel like it's for very good reason. Because though they represent a small percentage of the population, they are among the most destructive individuals out there. I think a lot of us are well versed at this point in the classic, more overt type of narcissist. The grandiose sense of self, the entitlement, the lack of empathy, and the desire for power and control. But there are some type of narcissists that are very hard to spot because they wear a mask. Their immoral behaviors are well hidden. They are more of the covert type. And it took me years after my divorce, after a lot of reading and a lot of therapy, to finally realize that I was married to one. So why did it take me so long to figure out? Well, number one, he was the ultimate wolf in sheep's clothing. He was a very skilled con artist. And number two, because that would mean that I had to admit to myself that this man that I had built a life with and had children with was actually a fraud. And our life together was a fabrication. It would mean admitting that he really didn't love and care about us, that we served more as a decoy to curate this image and fulfill his narcissistic supply. I spent years trying to put pieces together, trying to figure out his behavior, trying to figure out my experiences. And it wasn't until I started reading about personality disorders, and namely narcissism, and going to therapy when I finally had this aha moment. And now, going back to the beginning, I could finally connect the dots. We were really young when we got married. I was 19, he was 22. But for the background and culture that we grew up in, which is Mormonism, I mean, this was somewhat standard. But also our religious beliefs and the culture and the patriarchy, they all played a very important role in him being able to mask his true identity. He also proposed to me 6 weeks after dating, which I now know is a very common feature in a narcissistic relationship. And of course, back then, I said yes because he seemed like the ideal partner. He was very kind and very charming. He had what I thought were good morals and values. He was an upstanding member of the church, and he was well loved and well respected by his friends and family and even coworkers. And one of the key things that really drew me to him was this sense of altruism. He was always helping out others, especially his mom, who was a single mom. And even in our home, he kept up this image of being a great husband and a great father and a devout church member, to such an extent that when I did uncover a lie here or there, he was so masterful at manipulating me and gaslighting me that I began to gaslight myself, because no way would my very honorable husband be capable of doing these things, or even keeping things from me with ill intentions. In fact, a phrase that he would commonly use with me was, "I didn't want to tell you because I wanted to protect you," or "I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to stress you out." Looking back, there were signs, there were red flags, but cognitive dissonance is such a powerful tool in the narcissist toolbox. And when you as the partner are so trusting and moral, you can't wrap your head around someone lying to you and deceiving you on that level. So it wasn't until the end of our marriage where that house of cards began to crumble and my intuition kicked into high gear. And things really started to unravel. And I had to make a very conscious decision to pay attention to my intuition and my new reality, and not allow his manipulation to overturn what I had come to learn. And though I will never know all of his secrets or the extent to which he deceived me, I did uncover enough to realize that he was living a double life. And what I had discovered was so shocking, it made my head spin. And without even knowing it, I was in the beginning stages of betrayal trauma. Being able to see your deceitful partner through a clear lens is traumatic in itself. Discovering that you have been married to someone and you've built this life and you've had children with them and they've actually been a pathological liar is the ultimate betrayal. And I didn't even know this existed, but it's actually called betrayal trauma. And it's not something that's talked about very often. But betrayal trauma can cause confusion and anxiety and distrust in others, as well as complex PTSD. And there's something else that's not often talked about when it comes to divorcing the covert narcissist or the communal narcissist, or really any other type of narcissist. And that is, once you divorce the narcissistic partner, the people around you, your friends, your family, your church members, will very likely see you as the problem, at least initially. And this is for two reasons. Because the covert narcissist is typically well loved and well respected in their community. They are seen as the salt of the earth variety. And most of those outsiders don't get to see the dark side like you do. And even if you were to tell them, they probably wouldn't believe you, just like you didn't believe it for yourself. And number two, the narcissist will run a smear campaign about you behind the scenes. They will make you out to be the villain in order to save their precious facade. And that's what adds insult to injury. Because being brave enough to exit a toxic marriage while the rest of the world thinks you have this wonderful marriage is going to cost you. It may cost you friendships and other relationships. It may even cost you your reputation. But it is undoubtedly worth it in the end. Years after my divorce, I went back to therapy. And it wasn't until one of my sessions that I had this huge epiphany. I remember telling my therapist that I felt like a lead investigator on a cold case, and I needed to figure some things out. I still could not make sense of my ex-husband's behaviors, my experiences within our marriage, his substance abuse issues, and him being MIA for years now. I still suffered from so much confusion and resentment. And she said to me, okay, I want you to act as though your ex-husband is standing right in front of you. What are all of the things that you would like to say to him? You don't need to say it out loud, but say it in your mind. So I sat there and I took a big breath, and then I kind of nervously laughed. And I thought, man, there are so many things I would like to say to him and so many questions I have. All of the how could you and why would you? So I went through it all. I said everything I would like to say in that moment, asked all the questions I would like to ask. And when she felt like I was ready, she asked me if I was finished. And she said, what do you think his response would be? And I laughed and shook my head. And I said, oh, he would deny and deflect, and I would not get any answers. And then all of a sudden, it hit me out of nowhere. And I realized that was the answer. And I began to sob. And I just kept saying, he doesn't care. He doesn't care. He only cares about himself. And it was the first time I had finally been able to see behind the mask who he really is at his core. And once you see someone for who they really are, and you realize that they are selfish and self-serving, all of those behaviors, all of those experiences you have with them make sense. So now the details, all the unanswered questions, none of it matters. It's irrelevant. It wasn't the missing pieces that I needed to close the case. It was the revelation that I was married to the mask. And the person behind it was never going to change. They were never going to apologize or even feel remorse. And my ability to understand that was going to be my closure.